Hi, I'm Charlie Allbone, and welcome to episode 3 of That's How We Grow, in partnership with STIHL Garden Power Tools. I love the taste of freshly picked, homegrown fruits and vegetables. The taste and the beautiful smell set them so far apart from anything you can buy in a store. And the satisfaction of knowing you've fed and supported the food that you can now enjoy, well, there really is nothing better. The popularity of veggie patches exploded during lockdown periods around Australia. People rediscovered their backyard and embraced their veggie patch. Well, anyone can grow a nice vegetable patch. Anyone can have a good season. But planning a vegetable patch and having quality fruit and vegetables season after season sets gardens apart. This week on the episode, we have the amazing Maggie Beer. She's an Australian cook, a food author, restaurateur and a food manufacturer living in the Barossa Valley. In 2012, Maggie was appointed a member of the Order of Australia. And the last time I saw Maggie, she explained to me the joys of verjuice, which I had no idea what they were. And Maggie actually makes my favourite ice cream ever made, but she hasn't given me the recipe yet. So I'm going to challenge myself and try and get it from her now. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. Burnt fig, honeycomb and caramel. Now, I have eaten an obscene amount of this ice cream. Can you please give me the recipe? Or is it a secret?
First start with a ton of figs and try and burn them. There you are, Charlie. That's as much as you're getting from me.
Oh, come on, please, a little bit more.
Oh, no. The skill is all in burning the figs.
So delicious. It's really good. You're known for gourmet foods. You've authored 11 award-winning cookbooks. You're a whiz in the kitchen. But I find that chefs, they often have a relationship with the garden as well because of, the obvious correlation. Is that something that you have?
Oh, absolutely. My garden is as great a love as my kitchen. And even more so in the last, actually since lockdown. Lockdown has given me more time than ever. And I've always loved my garden, but being frustrated by not having enough time in it. So
yes.
I'm just in love with it.
That's the problem with gardening. You want to do it so much that when you go off to work and you just desperately want to be back there, and the more time you can spend there, the happier you are. I had the best Father's Day just passed where I was let free into the garden and just slaved away, clearing out garden beds and finishing off my veggie patches, and I had the best day. It was fantastic. Really loved it. Where did your love of gardening come from?
Well, it really only came from living in the Barossa. I didn't start gardening till I closed the pheasant farm, which is back in '93, because, just not ever having a moment spare in my life. And we had locals who gardened for us for the vegetables. And so I didn't have, and we were at the farm, the soil, we have high salinity and poor soil on the farm side, the pheasant farm side. So it was coming here, that's 37 years ago. It seems like yesterday. And there were lots of trees, but not much of a veggie garden. And so that was the beginning. But really, I only got serious about 10 years ago and raising all the veggie gardens. I have 8 long veggie gardens, enough for a family of 20, and we're only 2. And
that's a good problem to have.
It is, because having the raised gardens has meant all the difference in the world to me, because I've had a bad spine all my life. So now it's so easy with the veggies, not the rest of the garden. That's digging.
So what sort of height are your raised vegetable patches? Are they sort of 600 mil, 800 mil?
Yes, about 800 mil, because I'm quite tall.
Okay.
And so they're absolutely perfect for me. And
one of the benefits of having them raised up like that is you get the benefits of free draining soil, but it's just from a practical point of view, though, it's much easier to work them, isn't it? Yes,
and as you age, it's much easier, and I would recommend it for anyone, because then it just, if something is really simple, they're more likely to do it as just a normal part of their life. So
absolutely.
Yeah, all for them.
I've just finished a large vegetable patch in my garden. I made them all. I actually made wicking garden beds, so there's sort of a
Did you?
reservoir of water underneath. Because
Yes.
I come and go from the property, I'm not there all the time. Wicking beds mean that I don't have to worry about watering them all the time. But they're 600 mil high with a cap, so you can use them as seats, which is really lovely. So they're kind of. I'm finding it's the family is flocking to the veggie patch more because they've got somewhere to sit, and and it's really lovely. Really enjoying it.
Ah.
When you created your gardens, did you do a lot of soil preparation?
Yes, certainly for the
Yeah.
veggie gardens, a huge amount of soil preparation,
Mm,
and so it was a mixture of having some stones right down the bottom, also lining because they're galvanized iron, and we get tremendous heat. Lining the
mm,
sides with some polystyrene from broccoli boxes to stop the
okay.
intense heat.
Yes.
Having a huge mix of sheep manure, chicken manure, loam, straw, just really the preparation was very important to it.
It's key. Preparation to
Yes.
the soil is key to the success. You
Mm.
mentioned that the rest of your garden is sort of in the ground. Is
Yes.
vegetable gardening your favorite type of gardening, or do you like growing flowers and other sorts of things?
Oh, the veggie garden's my absolutely first love. But
Yeah.
I do love roses. And here in South Australia, in the Barossa, we have the perfect climate for roses. And
Yes.
I love scent. And so I have a lot of scented roses. I have a lot of jasmine. I have wisteria. And yes, I love that too. But the veggie garden's first call. If
Right.
I'm limited of time, that's where I'll spend my time because I have someone that comes in and helps for 4 or 5 hours a week. But we've got
Hmm.
20 acres, where
Wow.
we've got,
That's a lot
uh,
of work.
yes, yes. Well, a lot of it is the vines and the olives and quinces, but we've still got at least a hectare of just space around the cottage.
Yes, lovely. Do you use the roses and things like that in your cooking as well? Sort of edible flowers and that sort of stuff?
Well, I love the rose hip. The rose leaves, I always mean to and never get around to it. There's a lot of that in gardening
Mm.
and cooking, all the things. But the ones that I have that have a large hip on it, making a rose hip syrup and serving it with rabbit, there are endless ways of utilizing what's in the garden.
Gosh, you're making me hungry talking about things like that. The weather's really warming up now. Do you prefer sort of the fruits and vegetables that come in summer, or do you sort of look forward to every season and everything that's different?
Well, one of the great things about South Australia is having four very distinct seasons. I grew up in Sydney, and so
Hmm.
coming here was like understanding how to live the rhythm of the season. So each season is special. But if you ask me my favorite season, that's always autumn.
Yes.
But then I love winter, and then I love spring, and then I love
That's
autumn.
it. The seasons seem to be the perfect length that, you look forward to the next one. You've had enough of one season, then something else starts to happen. You fall in love with the next season. It's great like that.
Absolutely. I've got my first asparagus has come, and the broad beans are nearly ready, and the purple sprouting broccoli is going mad, and I've still got the kale left over from winter. And, it's that lovely, you're right. It's the excitement of the season. I just
Yes.
love it.
You're lucky you've got the space to grow a lot. For the
Yes.
home gardener, you know, in sort of a standard block, it's very difficult to grow enough food to support yourself. So I always think you need to, whatever you grow, really make a celebration of that harvest and sort of
Yes.
have a big meal around it and get family around if you can at the time. Is that something you like to do, or do you have a glut of fruit and veg that you can't handle?
Well, we do have a huge abundance, but then we've got the family, but we also have the eatery at the pheasant farm. So when I have too much rocket, when I have too much kale,
Mm,
I've got it never, nothing goes to waste. That's
that's
part
good.
of my ethos. But yes, we can get too much of something that's so beautiful. And before we eat it all. It can go to seed if I've not been generous because I love it too much.
I love, we have this amazing lemon tree, and one of my favorite things is to give the lemons away because they're like nothing else. The taste of something homegrown just seems to surpass anything you can buy in the shops, I think.
Well, we have quite a, 2 weeks ago, I picked two loads of my ruby grapefruit. It was just so huge, the biggest wheelbarrows I have, and full to the top. So then I have a problem with what to do with all those. Yes.
Right. Well, you could put them in some ice cream, perhaps.
Oh, no. I've got other things in mind. Like, have you ever tried Campari and ruby grapefruit, or making your own tonic water? So all of those things are in play right now.
Yes. Do you, with the definite seasons you have in the Barossa, planning your harvests and what you grow is so important. How much time do you put into that?
Well, I guess over the years I've got a pretty good system, and because we've got 8 beds, to make sure that we've got rotation. So I keep a map of it, and I really think about it because for me, everything tastes so wonderful when you just pick and cook. But I always concentrate on those vegetables that are not easy to buy. Like, I don't grow broccoli, but I grow sprouting, purple sprouting broccoli. I grow rapini or cime di rape because you can't buy that in the shops. And so I don't grow ordinary brown onions, but I grow beautiful red onions. And, I'm selective. I'm selective, and I don't waste space on something that's very easy.
Yeah, it's nice that you grow sort of individual things. Yeah, because if you can buy it readily, then and it comes from a good source, do that. But then and grow the unusual stuff.
Yeah.
So we did mention soil preparation being so important. It can also be quite hard work if you don't raise your beds up. Is that something you've spent some time on, digging, turning over soil and things like that?
Well, you talked about Sunday. I had the best day on Saturday because I decided to pull out agapanthus. Now, agapanthus had become so clumped, so I spent the whole day turning the garden over and pulling out every little bit of the tubers of the agapanthus, and I felt so good, and then put some hooflung dung in and some manure in, ready to replant it. And I love that feeling. My back doesn't like it.
No. Mine doesn't like turning over the soil much either. Sometimes I get on a combi tool or something like that and get on a pick tine and turn it over that way. But sometimes you just do need to get into the fork. You need the experience of that. What have you got planned for that bed?
Zinnias.
Oh, nice.
I love zinnias, and really the tall ones, not the small ones, not the mini ones, and that profusion of colour, because it's against the wall of a very old cottage at the front of our property. So yes, so it's all ready now.
Yes. You mentioned that you grow quince. Now, I've got a really hot wall that I'm trying to grow cherries against, but it's too hot and I don't have the right climate. So I'm sort of going to give up on them. And I'm thinking a quince would be perfect to espalier against a wall because, the flowers are just so vibrant in red and the quince can really take the heat. Do you have any tips for growing quince?
Yes. Quince are such a hardy tree. At least they are. I'm not sure about quince with humidity, but certainly in our climate, quince, or had you thought of fig as against a hot wall? Because that would be wonderful too. And I have figs against our hot stone wall. But the quince, it needs so little. It can get codling moth, but it's very unusual. We don't spray anything. So it's and my favorite quince to use is the Smyrna rather than the pineapple. And there are many others, but the Smyrna is the one that I find the hardiest.
I've written that down. I'm definitely going to go that way.
I have a lot of quinces. We have 3 quince orchards. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a persimmon orchard as well. But
have you?
Yes, and they're such a beautiful tree. They've got a lovely umbrella shape to them, and the fruit looks amazing. But that aftertaste, I just can't quite warm to it yet. I have found if you put them in the freezer, they kind of go a bit frozen. Then you can scoop them out, and that sort of aftertaste disappears a little bit. But
yes, that's the tannin. I presume you're talking about the really old-fashioned one that's sort of diaphanous and it has to look as if it's rotten. Well, I've found, because we have a beautiful tree of this, I found I have to only pick those that are almost rotten, and then that tannin is not there. Right. If you pick them even a day or 2 before they're ready, then you get that, back of the that nasty tannin. But you're absolutely right about freezing. But I often take the pulp out and make it into a baked custard or a bread. There are lots of other ways, or just having it as a sorbet, as you said.
Yes, it's lovely. We've got alpacas and donkeys that the alpacas take them off the trees, and then the donkeys run in and steal them. So yeah. So you also, as well as gardening and cooking, you have a charity. Is that right?
Yes. Well, I have a foundation trying to change the food in aged care, and so that's the biggest job, Charlie, I have ever undertaken. But we've been going at it 7 years now, and really progress is never, ever as quick as you want it to be. But we've been able to pull together even the government to listen, and the Royal Commission has helped that. And earlier this year had a congress bringing all the parts of aged care together to find a path to do better. And for my foundation's part, the education process. So we've just finished doing 11 segments of online filming for online training into aged care homes, because there's no specialized training. So, and the difference that beautiful food can make to the well-being of an older Australian, or of anyone really, but particularly those that can't look after themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's so important.
It's so important. I mean, even the health benefits of eating good quality food is amazing, but also the sight of good quality food in front of you as well. It lifts the spirit. So it's good for physical and mental health. So that's amazing that you're doing that. It's really
great. Absolutely.
Is there any way that anyone can help support you in that?
Well, yes, we have a website for our foundation, my foundation, Maggie Beer Foundation.org.au. I think I've got that right. Gosh, I never look up myself, but Maggie Beer Foundation will find it. And yes, we are always trying to do so much more education, to pull people around us that are doing things well. There are so many possible ways to help. So going to the foundation website is a starting point for anyone who's interested.
Excellent. That's really excellent. I want to talk about your raised vegetable patches again quickly, because you said something. Setting up a vegetable patch, there's a few key things you need to get right. Obviously, you need as much sun as you can possibly get. Yes. Free draining, good quality soil. But how much of it is sort of learning as you go? Because you mentioned you've got raised beds made of tin and you've insulated them. Now that's something that someone might not pick up. How much have you learnt on the way of your sort of growing journey?
Oh my gosh. I was lucky. Absolutely. I was lucky enough to have a neighbour that helped me set it up, and she has green fingers. Some people just do. I've learnt to garden. It's not, whereas I know how to cook without thinking. Gardening, I've had to learn. Right. And she was a great teacher. But once and you never stop learning. But once you start actually raising something and eating it and understanding how much better it will taste than anything else you'll ever buy, it just drives you to expanding your knowledge. And so where do I get that from? I just get it from experience, I think, and the help, because I don't raise my seedlings myself because I never have the time.
Yes.
And so I have Rachel, who raises the seedlings for me now, and so that means that's the hard work done.
Yeah, that is the hard part. Growing from seed is very difficult. From seedling onwards, it's much easier.
It is. I can take it from seedling on, and I know how to look after it because I know how much water it needs, because it tells me, the garden tells you these things.
Yeah, once you spend some time out in a veggie patch and make mistakes, you learn from it, definitely.
Yes.
It's funny, when I design gardens for people, they say, I want a veggie patch, but I want it to look really cool and really trendy. And I'm like, yeah, you just wait until you actually do it, and then you'll think it's cool and trendy, And it starts to look like every other veggie patch. And look how cool it looks now. I'm like, yeah, it looks exactly like every other one. It's great. It's brilliant. Yeah. Is there any vegetable you can't live without?
Oh gosh,
mine's definitely broccoli. I love it.
Well, mine's probably eggplant.
Right.
I would grow 5 different types of eggplant through the summer which goes right through to the autumn. I couldn't bear to be without it, and to be without the cross section of the different varieties. Oh no, but yes. Potatoes are probably bottom of the list until you get a wonderful waxy potato, and then I don't have space for them in my raised garden, so they go in with the roses and never can get them out.
How do you treat your sort of ground grown garden beds in comparison to your raised beds?
Okay, well, they need, because we can have really intense heat, but it's a dry heat. So the watering system has got to be in there. There has to be regular feeding. Feeding is just so much more important than you think. If you're just until you're really involved in a garden. So feeding your roses, feeding your citrus, they're very hungry. Feeding your macadamia, they're really hungry plants. Mulch. Mulch is really, really important in our climate, but also is pulling the cooch out of the garden when it invades.
Yeah, competition is a killer.
Competition is a killer. So, making sure you don't have too much under your citrus as competition. And but these, I think you're right. Experience teaches you as well as learning from others.
So Maggie, as a gardener and as somebody who grows a lot of different vegetables, do you follow the rules of crop rotation and fallow fields and things like that? As you're an organic gardener, I can imagine that'd be quite important.
Yes, I think planning is so important, and I keep an annual guide of my 8 plots of the veggie garden. So the rotation can be very clear, because one year someone did me a favor and put tomatoes in when I was away, and then I finished up with a problem. And then fallow mustard seed we tend to put in as a fallow crop in between, but it's very important to be moving and not moving your tomatoes, your eggplants, all of those, to be moving them and not coming back to the same place for 3 years, I find.
Yes. Well, I think those types of plants, each one draws different nutrients from the soil. So if you keep planting the same thing in the same spot, it's just extrapolating the issue of taking one too many nutrients out. And having a mustard crop or something like that, you can turn it back into the soil, but it also allows you to, give some time to putting some compost and some other nutrients back as well.
Yes, and it is really important. And I've learned to do that. I've learned the importance of it.
Yeah, it is tempting to keep growing something in the same spot if it's done well. If you've had a good season, you think, I'm just going to do that again.
Yes. But, and I guess the luck that I have is having the 8 separate beds. It's very easy to be systematic about it. It's one of the few things I might be systematic about.
Yes. So do you give it 3 years between growing something in the same spot then?
Yes, I give it 3 years because I've got the space to do that.
Yes.
So I'm not sure, but I've had the problem once, and I don't want to have it again of having to sort of leave it fallow for several years because of having I've just mental blank. When you have the problems in the soil from the plants.
So did you have a nematode in the soil?
Nematode.
You did, yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Yes.
Yes, and once they're terrible, and they're even terrible when you pull them out and you see you've got them. They make you feel dreadful. So it took 3 years to
have you always had a big garden, or have you ever sort of gardened on a smaller scale?
I've never gardened on a smaller scale, but I try and encourage anyone with my cooking. I really try to say to people, even if you don't have a garden, even if you have pots on your balcony, have fresh herbs, what that will do to your cooking is just incredible. It's a starting point.
Yes.
Excuse me. So encouraging people to have the smallest, if that's what they're limited to, is really important to me.
Starting with herbs is a great place to start sort of, growing stuff that you're going to eat. I find easy things to grow, like lettuce is kind of the next step up, and spinach and stuff like that sort of is quite easy to grow. And then once you're into that, you're into it and you're just trying anything, I find.
Absolutely. Like, you know how quickly radishes come up? Well, if you get a watermelon radish and it comes up and it's sort of like so spectacular, you think you've been responsible, green on the outside and red all through, and you slice it and you think, oh, my goodness, it gives you...
So clever.
That's exactly right. It gives you encouragement for the next step.
So Maggie, when you started your veggie patches, how did you pick the location? What were you looking for?
Well, the location, 2 things. One, it had to be full sun, and it had to be close to the back door, as close as possible, that you went past it every day. Even if you weren't out in the garden, it sort of sang out to you.
That's so important. It's so important to have it to you. I find if you're a real keen gardener and you really want to do it, you can sort of place it further away from the house because you want to be there. But if it's closer, you're more likely to check on your veg every day, and that's when you kind of get on top of any issues as well.
Absolutely.
You set them up from scratch, so you know the process. Apart from full sun, was there anything else you're looking for? I know you've raised them up, which obviously helps with drainage and for practical reasons. Was there anything else you looked into?
Yes, because our soil here naturally we have sandy loam. So we needed to have a much richer soil in. So it was buying in some loam, we had sheep manure, bird, pheasant manure, and the straw from the sheds were all very important. And so it was natural compost, and having we also put along the sides of the bed itself, because of the heat of summer sometimes here in South Australia. It just put some cushioning of the sides of broccoli boxes to keep the main heat away. So it was getting all that goodness into the soil was really, really important and deep. Even though vegetables are quite shallow, it somehow was very important to me that I had such depth in case I wanted to plant something.
I think a big body of soil as well, with the insulation of the broccoli boxes, that just adds to insulation of the soil. So you've got a hot top and a cold bottom, if you will, and that's perfect for growing vegetables.
See, I did something I didn't know. The other thing was the watering system, tubes, about 5 tubes coming down each way. So when you plant where the water is coming out, because water, we have to contain our water here. Water is our scarce resource. And so we have to make every bit of water count. So that was important.
Yeah, you really need to be careful. Heavily mulching vegetables is really important as well, irrelevant of what climate you're in. It does a lot of good. Again, it gives you those cool roots and it helps to suppress weeds and it will help spread your water out as well. It sort of has that capillary effect of pushing the water out before it goes down, which is really important. Yeah, and you could also try a wicking bed, sort of similar to what I set up, would be really good for somewhere like where water is so scarce.
Well, I've been tempted to start again with wicking beds in another idea I have, but I haven't convinced Colin yet. So whether he wants to start again. I'm working on it, Charlie.
Starting again is daunting, but all big projects are most rewarding, aren't they?
They are indeed.
Yes. Do you have any tools that you love? Like I was talking to Graham Ross last week, and he's got an old fork that his granddad passed down to him, and that's his favourite tool. Do you have anything like that sort of makes you nostalgic?
Not nostalgic, but a friend just gave me. If you had have asked me a month ago, it would have been a different answer. But a friend has just given me a gardening knife. And it's serrated on one side. It also has measurements of how deep it is. And it means that I can say I'm wanting to cut off my red cabbage, as I did last week, the last of the red cabbage. I can cut it at the base with the knife and I can dig down. And that it's really hand tools that are great for me. I mean, if you ask Colin the same question, it'd be something to take all the weeds from around the trees of our orchard because I won't let him spray.
Yes.
But yes.
Have you tried using salt and vinegar to get rid of weeds as a spray, as an organic spray? That works quite well.
No.
So you mix up salt and vinegar and it really dehydrates the plant. And I mean, for perennial couches and grasses, you do need to give it a couple of hits, but if you use salt and vinegar, it will kill quite a lot of weeds, certainly annual weeds. And if you add a bit of soil wetter as well, it really helps with those grasses.
Okay. Let me write that down. We've used milk in the garden.
Milk works really well on fungal diseases and things like that. Yes.
Yep.
A 50-50 mix will get rid of a lot of fungal diseases. Yes. So try salt and vinegar. That works really well.
And some water. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Go on.
Yes. So that's my recipe for you. I'm still after this ice cream recipe. A fair trade.
Oh, no, that's not quite a fair trade. We need something else.
I'll have to scratch my head. Maggie, it has been an absolute delight talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm thrilled, Charlie. Always love listening to you.
So now it is time for me to answer some questions from the community. And Jonathan from Melbourne asked, is there a difference between planting a veggie bed and my regular garden bed? Well, yes, there is. So all types of garden beds like organic matter added to them. If you add compost to sandy soil, it will help to bind it together. If you add compost to clay soil, it will bring in worms and help to break it up. But a veggie bed is such a highly productive area with such a lot of growth and such a lot of harvest that comes out of it, you need to support that with additional nutrients. So a little bit extra compost than you would in a garden bed and lots of fertilizer. So that can be organic or it can be synthetic, whatever your preference is. I like to use organic in my veggie beds and I use synthetic when I'm not eating the food. So just up the quantities of things that you would do normally. In a normal garden bed, I would say put 100 millimeters of compost over the surface and dig that through well. In a raised veggie patch, you'd probably be doing 150 mil, and then you'd be using an organic mulch like a pea straw on top. Always combine it in well, and you should be going great. Joanna from Plenty, north of Melbourne, asked, I created my first veggie patch last year, and I'm looking to create another this spring. One thing that's putting me off is I've got clay soil and it was really compacted and hard to dig in. Is there any way to make this easier? So I mentioned in the previous question that adding compost to clay soil is really important, but before you do that, actually, you need to do a bit of a stability test, which sounds more difficult than it is. You need distilled water, which basically boil the kettle and leave it to cool. Put that in a jar. Then put a tiny bit of your clay soil into that jar and leave it for 24 hours. Once you go back to it, you need to look at the colour of the water. If it is crystal clear and the soil is just sitting at the bottom, you've got a stable clay soil and you can just add compost. That's a great thing to do. If the water is cloudy, then you've got an unstable clay soil. So adding gypsum to that soil will help to flocculate all the little parts together and give you a stable soil. So you need to add some gypsum first, then you can start adding your compost. The addition of compost will help to free it up. Do you have a gardening question you'd like us to answer? Send us an email, charlie@stihl.com.au. You need to really dig that compost through your garden bed. Now you can do that with a fork, you can do that with a shovel, or you can make it easy on yourself and use a STIHL combi tool with a pick tine. That's going to help to combine it really well and break the soil up. Once you've done that, you're ready to plant. And now I feel absolutely starving. I'm going to head out into the garden and find something to eat. But what else did we learn? Well, we learned the benefits of a raised garden bed. It's so important to get that good drainage and to make your garden beds practical at the same time. The importance of crop rotation as well. You don't want to come into any issues like nematodes, so crop rotation is the way to go. We also talked about how to plan a new bed and the difference between a veggie and a regular garden bed. We touched on, and sadly, I didn't succeed on finding Maggie's secret recipe for her ice cream. That will remain a mystery going forwards. In our next episode, I'll be joined by my old Selling Houses Australia co-host, Andrew Winter. Whilst by his own admission, Andrew might be an awful gardener, he knows how much a well-planned and maintained garden can add to the value of your property. I'll also give you all the advice you need on how to tackle a wild or overgrown garden if the time should arise. Need the tools to take on any garden challenge? Go to the STIHL website or head into your local STIHL dealer today. Follow STIHL on Instagram at @stihl_au. And follow me on Instagram as well at charlie_albone. And don't forget to check out STIHL's blog with plenty of great gardening advice, tips and tricks.